Wonderful. Thank you. Just sharing my screen here. Hopefully, folks are able to see my slide deck.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Excellent. Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much for that introduction. John Topolovec, Senior Emergency Management Project Lead. Very grateful to be able to provide the British Columbia jurisdictional update for you folks today. Before I jump into the content, just want to acknowledge that I'm coming to you today from Nelson, which is located on the traditional territory of the Ktunaxa, Sinixt, and Syilx people. I feel very fortunate to be able to work, live, and play in such a beautiful part of the province here. So a little bit about us, not on the slide, but very recently, within the last 2 weeks, following the provincial election, our ministry name changed. So we are no longer the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. We are now the Ministry of Environment and Parks. But on April 1st of 2024, our program was rebranded as the Environmental Emergency Branch. This transition from a program to a branch has really led to more recognition for the work that we do to protect the environment from hazardous materials, as well as reflects our expanded roles and responsibilities in environmental emergencies across the board. Our scope is changing, and oil spills are really just a small component of what we do. We're becoming increasingly more involved in response and recovery efforts for all hazards, wildfires, floods, landslides, and all those other things that naturally occur and impact communities or the environment. We are divided into 4 regions: the Northern Region, Southern Interior Region, Lower Mainland, and Vancouver Island, with approximately 56 staff strategically located in 15 locations throughout the province. Our headquarters is located in Victoria, which is on Vancouver Island and is the capital city of BC. Our branch is divided into 4 primary groups, starting on the preparedness side, which is where I fit. We focus on building the capacity and capabilities to allow us to respond effectively. And this is done through the incorporation of provincial, national, and international best practices for environmental emergency management, which we then factor into our plans, policies, and branch strategies. Our response folks really are ensuring our response readiness and conducting the day-to-day response operations, which obviously includes spill response, which is our core business. They have a hand in developing provincial response policies and procedures. Our compliance and enforcement team falls within the response pillar, and they also have a hand in community outreach and public information, particularly when a spill incident has occurred. Recovery oversee and regulate spill recovery, as well as focus on restoring the environment to its natural state through monitoring and sampling, as well as recovering residual spilled product and treating contaminants as a result of a spill. Our last but certainly not least is our Flood Debris Management Secretariat. This team was stood up following the 2021 atmospheric river event, which was a pretty significant flood that impacted British Columbia back in November 2021. And they continue to manage the resulting flood debris from that event. And that's done through the identification, prioritization, and ultimately addressing debris sites that pose a risk to public safety, critical infrastructure, the environment, and culturally significant areas. So looking back at our last reporting period, which was the fiscal year 2023-24, we had just shy of 5,100 spills reported, and this shows the increasing trend of reporting spills continuing. So we are up from the previous year, which was 4,889. The Lower Mainland accounted for the highest number of total spill incidents, followed by Vancouver Island and the Southern Interior, who also contributed significant numbers as well. The northern region had the fewest incidents, which may correlate to the lower industry and population densities found in that region compared to some of the other portions of the province. Diving a bit deeper into the spills and looking at materials and cause, starting on the left, materials, flammable liquids are the most frequently spilled substance that we see reported, and this is due to their extensive use in various sectors, followed pretty closely by non-hazardous pollutants. And while not immediately dangerous, these pollutants can still significantly impact ecosystems. Third, on the materials side, is actually potential spills, which highlights the importance for readiness and assessment, even in the absence of an actual spill. Moving over to the causes side on the right, equipment failure is the leading cause across sectors, particularly in commercial, transportation, and mining for spills. Second is unknown sources, which represent just over 20% of the reported spills. And this highlights the challenges in identifying the sources of many of these spills as they're being reported or identified. Third and fourth on the cause side, so sinking, grounding, and human error, they're both significant contributors as well, and found that these are prevalent in sectors with high manual operations such as transportation and recreational activities. I'm going to touch very briefly on a significant spill, but one of my fantastic colleagues will be presenting on a second incident during the case study portion of today. So hopefully folks are able to tune into that. But what I'll be speaking to here is a heavy fuel spill that occurred in the Nanaimo Harbor on July 26, 2023. So Canadian Coast Guard notified the Environmental Emergency Branch that approximately 7,000 liters of heavy fuel spilled from a docked cargo ship. Unified Command was established at the WCMRC Nanaimo base and was comprised of the Canadian Coast Guard, the Ministry of Environment Parks / Environmental Emergency Branch, the Nanaimo First Nation, Nanaimo Harbor Authority, as well as the responsible person. Fortunately, the majority of the spill product was contained by the WCMRC boom that was initially deployed. Having said that, an unknown volume did migrate from the initial spill area or site, and sheen was reported in the harbor as well as Nanaimo River estuary areas. The environmental unit was stood up to oversee the assessment of impacts and recommend protective and restorative actions. We had our response and recovery staff embedded in the incident command post, as well as deployed to the field conducting shoreline surveys. And these folks were also supported virtually by other members of our branch. Response efforts continued for about 3 to 4 weeks into mid-August, and EEP staff oversaw the successful treatment of the shoreline impacts during the initial response phase and were able to conclude that long-term monitoring was not a requirement of this incident. Jumping into some highlights and some challenges that we have experienced over the last year since we reported last. On the highlights side, our program, before it became a branch, was audited for our effectiveness to manage hazardous material incidents. Within that audit, there were 9 recommendations which were provided, and we accepted as well and developed an audit action plan. Second, we finalized our Northern Shelf Bioregion Framework. This was jointly developed by the Pacific North Coast First Nations, the province of British Columbia, as well as our federal partners at the Government of Canada. This is a government-to-government initiative under the Reconciliation Framework Agreement and really sets the foundation for collaborative marine incident preparedness, response, and recovery. We're happy to report that we provided $415,000 through the Indigenous Funding Program to multiple First Nations, Indigenous organizations, and Indigenous-owned businesses to support projects, activities, and services related to spills management. We have developed a draft update of our British Columbia Hazardous Material Incident Management Plan, and definitely worth highlighting that we received, triaged, and took the necessary actions on all of the 5,979 spills that were reported during the 2023-2024 fiscal year. And finally, just want to highlight our participation in spill response exercises with industry, First Nations, as well as our other partner organizations. One of the challenges that we have experienced is really our expansion of scope from spills to being a natural resource sector lead for environmental impacts due to emergencies and disasters. The growing need for debris management, following floods, our role or increasing role and leadership role in wildfire and flood response and recovery. And then most recently, something that I was quite involved in was a significant landslide that occurred on the Chilcotin River, where our branch was tasked with coordinating the environment sector for recovery under a new provincial disaster recovery framework. And really what the challenge is navigating these new expectations, um, and how and building the tools that allow us to effectively meet these needs during response and recovery. What is ahead for us? We are updating and enhancing our provincial planning to meet new legislative requirements. This is in alignment with new legislation that came into play last November, which is called the Emergency and Disaster Management Act. Um, Requirements within this act are for all ministries within the provincial government of British Columbia to have plans that are developed in alignment with one another, and also in terms of methodology, format, and content. So lots of work ongoing there so that we can achieve provincial consistency. We are continuing to enhance our cost recovery processes. We are reviewing and updating our training and exercise requirements, and ultimately continuing to grow into our expanding role or roles in environmental emergencies. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation. Thank you very much.